right, great. I see people are starting to put where they're from in there, which is good. And Julie, I'm going to kind of have you introduce yourself and let's get started.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Julie Overton. I am a Senior Learning and Development Specialist at the University of Southern California, Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, specifically the Fall Prevention Center of Excellence. And I have worked there for the past 3 decades, managing a lot of applied research, training, and education grants that we have related to housing and long-term care. And I've been coordinating the Executive Certificate in Home Modification program for about the past 16 years. So worked in a variety of capacities at USC, and I love being there because I'm very much involved in applied research, and we work directly with professionals. So even though it's research, it's not just showing up in some journal. We're working hard to bring it to the hands of people that can really use it. So I have a presentation, and then do you usually do the questions at the end?
Yeah, usually
Okay.
that works pretty well.
Sure.
And does your presentation talk about how long this executive certificate has been going?
Yes. Yep.
Great, because that was going to be my question, but since you've got it, why don't we start with that?
Okay.
I'm actually going to take my camera off for a minute while I actually lower my standing desk.
Okay, sure. And I'm going to just proceed. Just really quickly, like I said, I'm from the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. We are a multidisciplinary research and education center. One part of the USC Leonard Davis School is the Fall Prevention Center of Excellence, and that's actually the division that I work in. Our School of Gerontology was founded over 40 years ago, actually by the same woman who started AARP, Ethel Percy Andrus. And Leonard Davis as well. And so that's why our school is named after Leonard Davis, and our center is the Ethel Percy Andrus Gerontology Center. So I'm sure, as most of you know, gerontology focuses on the social, psychological, cognitive, biological aspects of aging. And our faculty and staff there have been pioneers in home modification and universal design really for the past 4 decades. Working alongside programs and professionals who are in the field. And our School of Gerontology actually has a undergraduate, graduate, and PhD program in gerontology, if anybody's ever interested in that. And we do work a lot with the OT and PT schools on campus as well. I wanted to just mention one of our most recent projects is funded by the Administration for Community Living. It's called Promoting Aging in Place by enhancing access to home modification. And it really focuses on ways to maximize older adults' ability to age in place through research, training, and technical assistance. So it's a collaboration of the partners that you see right there on your screen. And I wanted to also mention, as a part of that, we've been developing a knowledge base, what's called an environmental scan, excuse the phone. And this is an ongoing data collection process. One of the things we hear from professionals and consumers is, just one moment, is having access to information about home modifications. And so what we've been doing is collecting lots of information about national, state, and local programs. And it's resulted in this state-by-state inventory that we have online. It's at homemods.org. And it's called the Home Modification Information Network. And this just shows an example of one of the state pages. The top left is a puzzle piece with spotlight on state and local activities. And this is where you can learn more about state level programs that exist in home modification. And that includes Medicaid waivers that might cover home modifications, tax credits. Some states actually have tax credits. To the right, funding sources. We created a grid on funding sources for home modification for each state. And then local providers by city is in the bottom left corner, which we continually add to. They're mostly nonprofit home modification programs, and as well as professional And then in the
I
bottom
just,
are educational materials. Yes?
can I just interrupt for 1 minute? So
Sure.
this page and stuff we can access without having done the certificate training or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. These are resources that were funded to create as a part of our government grant. So they're accessible to you if you want to spend the time and have particular topics that you're interested in.
Then I think you said there was a list of professionals that do that. So do we have to have the executive certificate to be listed in there, or is that an option as well?
You don't have to have the executive certificate to be listed as a local provider in the city directory, but it's not just professionals that are listed there, they're actual programs. So, you know, we don't want to just direct consumers to people per se, as opposed to trying to get them connected to services, unless the you know, if there's a business, a home modification business or program, and then that's what that is. We do have an alumni directory on our website of the individuals that complete the executive certificate program. So that's where we would have a listing of all the professionals, and anybody can access that as well. And that's one of the benefits of going through the program, is being listed there. And then in the bottom right corner, it says educational materials. Those are consumer materials that can be printed out. They are most developed by us, but also we do list those of private government organizations, like the Veterans Administration has fact sheets on home modification, the Administration for Community Living. So we try to get those materials into the hands of consumers and professionals that might benefit from them. So I just wanted to share that before going into just quickly an overview of why the home is such an important part of aging in place, and why it would be important to take the executive certificate program. So as most of you probably know, the overwhelming preference of older adults is to stay in their home and communities as they age. And increasingly over time, the home has become a delivery site for caregiving and for home and community-based services. And yet the home's condition impacts whether or not somebody can care for themselves in a safe manner. And it also impacts a provider's ability to deliver care. I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. And this is especially important with COVID-19, when older adults may not have as much caregiving support as they once did. Also with social isolation, with COVID-19, there's been a lot of physical consequences, as I'm sure you all know, with the field that you're in. A lack of activity results in physical deterioration. And so more supports are needed in the environment, and the environment plays even increasingly greater role than it has in the past with COVID. Just real quickly, the infographic for the US Census, I'm not going to go through all these percentages, but it just demonstrates some of the challenges related to aging in place. About a third of households over the age of 65 have at least one person who's challenged the home environment. And that means climbing stairs or using the bathroom, the bathtub. And yet only 10% of housing units are what's considered aging ready. And that's defined as a step-free entryway, having a bedroom and bathroom on the first floor, and having at least one bathroom accessibility feature. And also older people who need home modifications the most actually are the least likely to have them. And those are older households that are low income. So what is home modification repair? Just to give kind of a formal definition, basically changing the environment. And that can involve removing fall hazards to reduce the likelihood that a fall is going to happen. It could be adding supportive features such as handrails, grab bars, handheld showers, tub benches, and shower seats. And changing the behavior even, and the way that the person interacts with the environment, such as figuring out ways to safely conduct activities to avoid injury. So home modification is important for a lot of reasons. It's integral to aging in place, like I mentioned. As someone's health and their abilities and needs change, the home should change as well, and not remain stagnant. So the home should change with the person, but unfortunately that doesn't always happen. Home modifications can make those daily activities easier, reducing falls and injuries and supporting home and community-based care. For example, a formal caregiver may be assigned to help an older adult who's having difficulty with bathing, but if there's no grab bars or a bath seat or easier access into the shower, then with or without a caregiver, bathing is going to be unsafe. And also, home modifications have actually been found to be cost effective and save money. So one of the things that we go over in the executive certificate program is how to implement certain evidence-based models that are out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of lack of coordination between providers. Home modification is a type of service that's not a one-stop, just delivery. It involves assessment and finding installers and prioritizing and finding funding, which is often inadequate and very complex. And so there's this lack of coordination that needs to happen that doesn't always happen. And at the same time, there's a shortage of home modification service providers and professionals that are really trained in looking at the environment as a way to support care. And then consumers themselves, they're more likely to adapt their behavior than change their environment. So someone might sleep on a sofa rather than figure out a way to safely get to their bedroom upstairs. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of that as well. So there's lack of awareness among consumers, and that's one of the things we focus on. So we think that homes are really long-term care settings of the future, especially more and more people are wanting to stay in their own home as opposed to moving to more of a multi-unit setting. With just a growing number of older adults in the community, more care is being delivered at home. And yet, as I mentioned, there's a lack of sort of a qualified home modification workforce to meet this coming demand. So we actually created the executive certificate in home modification program back in 2004. And it's designed for professionals who work directly and indirectly with older adults and people with disabilities in home modification. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the person is installing the home modifications, but they may be the one doing the assessment, or they may be the one making the referrals or managing a home modification program. We have almost 1,600 alumni across the country, and the program series is 5 courses, and there is a final exam at the end. Each course is about 3 weeks long, and the series are offered 4 to 5 times annually. And I'm going to share those dates with you for 2021 in just a minute. Each series has about 40 students. We try to cap it at that because the interactive piece is so important. And if it's too big, then it's difficult to have people interacting with each other. Next slide, let's see. So this is the overall curriculum of the 5 courses. It's comprehensive and it's through the lens of gerontology. So graduates develop new knowledge and skills that allows them to establish partnerships within and outside of their existing networks that they might already be involved with, knowing how to make referrals to home modification programs and services, tools to raise awareness, how to find funding, make home modification recommendations to clients based on assessments, spend a lot of time on task analysis, and bringing in other service providers to work with to support aging in place. So these are the 5 courses. The first one is sort of the basics, setting up the foundation for the series. Second one is how to get it done. And that is the one that involves step-by-step assessment processes. And the good thing is there's a lot of really good assessment tools out there that examine both the environment and the person together and how they interact, as well as course 2 teaches the students how to actually create blueprints of an actual home modification plan. Again, not to say that people have to be housing professionals, but just having an understanding of what the home modification plan should entail, even if you're not the one that ends up being the one to make those plans, having an understanding of what the plan should look like. If you're working with a contractor or a remodeler is very important. The 3rd course focuses on funding and financing mechanisms, always the most popular one. Course 4 is community awareness, working with professionals and agencies and organizations to try to stimulate demand and also network among other professionals to try to increase that collaboration. And then the 5th course is on ethics. There's a lot of ethical issues that come up with home modifications. How long is the person going to maybe be living in that home? You don't want to be making recommendations, that are very expensive for that person if they indicate to you that they're going to be moving in a year, or maybe they have a chronic progressive disease. So you may not want to put in a ramp that's going to make it difficult for them to navigate versus putting in a lift system. And so really looking at what some of those ethical issues are. We want to make sure people don't leave the program without having exposure to that. So again, comprehensive topics, I just went over a lot of them. We really want to get this information people in user-friendly way through technology that's accessible right from your computer, no requirement to travel. We cover everything related to home modifications relative to the housing sector, healthcare sector, disability, and aging. It's flexible, so this is asynchronous. This means that the work can be completed each week according to your own personal schedule. You do have to complete the assignments within the week, so we want people to stay on track. But at the same time, we know, people are doing this alongside their jobs. And so students do it at lunch or in the evening or on the weekends, or, sometimes employers allow for training to take place during the workday. But you log into each week's lecture and you can do all of the work in one sitting or throughout the week, whatever works for your schedule. We have kind of what we call real world assignments that have really direct application. So there's email exercises that go directly to the instructor, so you get individual feedback. But then there's also class listserv posts where you get to share challenges related to the home environment with the class. We send students on sort of their own fact-finding missions to identify resources in their own community. So at the end of the program, students tell us that they end up with sort of like this toolbox of local resources or state resources that help them in their work. And then we have discussion boards, so you get to post reactions to case studies and then hear what your fellow students might think. And we have, each course has a final assignment to apply what you've learned, and then there's a final exam at the end. And so while the lectures are text-based, there's videos and resource links and pictures and lots of resources to download. And then there's that interactive component with the students that takes place through the discussion board and the listserv posts, which just show up in your email. There's about 4 to 6 hours of weekly online coursework. Obviously, some students spend more time than that and some spend less. It all sort of just depends on your background that you come to the program with and your interest level. Some people like to dive deeper into the resources that are in the course, and other students, are taking it for different reasons and don't spend as much time, but that's sort of the average, is 4 to 6 hours a week. And the instructors with expertise are brought straight to you, and you get that interaction with them. We're really proud of the fact that the instructors of each course end up being contacted once the program ends by the students. So there's this ongoing relationship. Hey, you know, I want to know what you think of this product that I found for this client. You know, not to say that we're doing that all day long, but we do have that relationship with the students. And speaking of the students, so while we have occupational therapists and physical therapists like yourself, we also have remodelers and contractors and handy persons and architects that take the program, which allows for a lot of interaction and I think appreciation from the housing sector that they should consider adding an OT or a PT to their home modification job and getting that healthcare perspective. We also have students from the disability sector, like Centers for Independent Living and rehabilitation centers, from the aging sector, meaning senior centers or area agencies on aging and case managers. And so this collaboration of these 4 sectors together of students really is one of the benefits of the program, because we're not just targeting one type of professional, which is the way that home modifications being multidisciplinary really requires understanding these various disciplines and how to work together. So a contractor in Idaho may have an idea that an OT in Texas hadn't thought of. And so there's that level of interaction, which is really cool to see. And we learn a lot from the students as well. So just related to that are the peer-to-peer conversations that happen among the students and professionals. The whole program takes place over about 4 months. By the time you take, you know, all 5 courses, they're about 3 weeks long each. And so you get to know your peers that are taking the program with you, and getting to know the instructors more so than you might in a typical webinar, or, you know, going to a conference and sitting in a room where you might not have that ongoing interaction. And, you know, there's this access to expertise and resources during the program and after. We, like I mentioned, establish this relationship, but then also having the opportunity to download a lot while you're taking the program is one way that you'll have tools once it ends. I wanted to mention that we're an AOTA approved provider. And so that streamlines the CEU process for OTs. The courses 1 through 4 are the longer courses. They're almost 3 weeks, not quite. And they're worth 12 continuing education hours, or 1.2 OT CEU hours. Course 5, which is the ethics course, is shorter. So it's 6 continuing education hours, or 0.6 OT CEU hours. I think I saw in the introductions, there were a few physical therapists as well. And physical therapy CEUs are on a state-by-state basis. There's APTA does not have the same kind of approved provider process. But upon completion of each of the courses, even if you decide not to take the whole program and just decide to pick and choose a course, we provide what's called a letter of completion that indicates all the objectives and the course requirements and the instructors, and that you met all of those requirements. And physical therapists submit those to their certifying bodies. We're in the process, though, of going state by state to get that approval, and hoping that we can streamline that process for the students. Just real quickly, so the tuition, each course is $200 each, which if you consider 12 CEU hours, that's a pretty good rate. Course 5 and the final exam are administered together, and they're $200. So the total tuition for the program is $1,000. The tuition for the program, if all courses are paid for upfront, we give a discount, is $9.25. And tuition for AOTA members for the entire program, there's $165 discount, so it's $835, and that's for the 4-month program. But again, some students only take 1 or 2 courses. You don't have to take the whole program, but you do have to take the whole program to get the executive certificate. So looking into 2021, I just wanted to show you what our calendar typically looks like. We are offering the series 5 times, which is about every other month. So depending on your interest, I believe series 1 is pretty much full. We might have a couple more spots, but we do have these other offerings throughout the year. And hopefully that would work with your schedules. So these are just some comments from students. I just wanted to leave them on the screen. These actually were from this year. I just pulled these from emails that we got from students. I'm not going to read through every single one of them, but just to give you a sense of the experience that students have with the program. And I don't know, I can't see the chat on my screen, so I'm going to try now. I don't know if there's.
Yeah, so there's only actually one real question there that you haven't answered is the certificate forever, or are there recertification requirements, and what does that look like?
So because this is a university-based professional education program, it's forever. When we say forever, the reason for that is that you're receiving the certificate based on the content of this program. It's kind of like if you got a degree, you don't have to recertify your degree. So it's different than a certification program. You're getting a certificate by completing these 5 courses and meeting all of the requirements. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and just with regards to the continuing ed, someone asked, is that 12 units per course? And my response was, it depends on who is asking and how they're counting, because there's a whole range of different ways that people count the units in time for CEUs.
So yes, that's true. And what we do is we verify that the student has completed 12 hours of learning time. And that again is based on an average, but that's pretty much, that's what we've decided that would be the max and the minimum. And so when we send the students letters of completion, it's 12 learning hours. So for OTs, I think that translates to 1.2 CEU units. And that's, so it kind of just depends on, like you said, the discipline. And that's why we break it down to the hours of time that someone should spend on the course.
So the other question here is, if you take parts of the training and not all of it, so say one year you took parts 1, 2, and 3, could you come back the next year and do the rest and then earn the certificate?
Yes, we have a database and we keep track of the students. And so if you come in and take course 1 and 2, and then for whatever reason, you have your job responsibilities change or something, you can come back and take 3, 4, and 5 another time. So, and we had that a lot this year with COVID, just because of, people were having to be very flexible with their jobs and what was going on. So yes, we do prefer that you take them in order, just because they do build on one another. But you, like I said, you could take course 1 and 2 and come back for 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, the other comment that I just have with you, I know you were talking about going state by state for the CEUs. I know from my experience out here, a lot of states now are moving towards just having the national certification for occupational therapists, the National Board for Certification in Occupational Therapy, monitor their units overall and then use that as acceptable. So I'm not sure that between AOTA and that, I'm not sure that state by state is worth the effort, I think is what I'm kind of getting at.
Right. Yes. Thank you for that. We'll look into that more. I mean, the good thing is USC, we're an accredited university, and the way that we've designed the letters of completion have the typical CEU requirements. And so students have used those letters to submit on their own. And I honestly cannot remember a time when somebody hasn't gotten CEUs. And that includes remodelers and contractors, and we even have nurses every now and then, and social workers and other disciplines, and that's why we have created the letter of completion in the way that we have, because it meets the criteria.
I think this would also meet the criteria for the CAPS that people need to do the continuing education for the CAPS as well.
Yes, we have many CAP students take our program, and that works out fine, and they use it for their hours.
Any other questions from anybody here? I'm not seeing any. If you pay for the entire course, can you then take it over 2 years if you pay for it all at once?
Oh, pay for it up front. Yes, because like I said, we're tracking you, and yeah, and that's fine. We just wouldn't reimburse and then have it come, that money would just sit there for you to come back and take the courses at a later time.
Yeah, somebody was just thinking, they take one in one block, 2 in the second block, 3 in the third block, just so they can spread it out a little bit with the
sure.
responsibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did want to just put also on the last slide, I don't know if you can see with the toolbar, but at the top is the specific URL to the online program information. You can also just go to homemods.org, and then it'll direct you if you don't want to write that long URL. And then in the bottom right corner of the screen is my email address. And then again, that homemods.org website for more information.
So when you talk about the assessment tools and stuff, I know you have a lot of different professionals going there, but most of us are OTs and some PTs in this discussion right now. How relevant are those to us and our profession versus some of the others the courses and certificates we've looked at are a little bit more general?
Well, our course 2, which is the one that focused most on assessments, is taught by an OT. And she goes through the task analysis process and evidence-based assessment tools and what some of the options are depending on who the client or patient is and what the best fit might be for the various types of tools. And so when you talk about relevance, I think, it depends on the student, what they're going to get out of it. The final assignment does ask you to choose an assessment tool and then apply it to a case study. And so we find that the OTs or PTs who already have experience with assessing, someone's function will choose assessment tools that are higher level or, much more specific to their knowledge base versus like a remodeler or a contractor might choose one that's a little bit more general. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was really helpful. And so the course often books out like a month or so in advance of those dates, right? Is that right? If we want to get in, we need to kind of get in earlier than that.
We generally fill up about 3 weeks before the next course starts. It just seems to be a natural wave that happens. So yeah, I would encourage not waiting until the last minute. Of the series, there's generally more availability in the summer. People aren't taking it as much, but like I said, right now, I know the one that starts in January, I think we have 1 or 2 spots left, but I can't even guarantee that, so.
And one of the things I noticed with you promoting the organization, like promoting organizations that offer the benefit and trying to encourage education about home modifications. Are you doing any of that like in conjunction with AOTA or any professional groups or?
Yeah, so we actually head up and lead, it's called the National Home Modification and Home Safety Work Group. And AOTA, Scott Trudeau, I don't know if you know him from AOTA, but
I know Scott well.
he sits on that work group with us. And that work group is made up of committees that focus on service delivery issues, policy, research, and consumer awareness. And it's made up of national associations and government agencies. We also head up a national steering committee of only federal agencies. So that includes Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Energy, the Veterans Administration. I know there's a whole long list of them, but that's a goal of the project that I mentioned earlier, the ACL project, is to get, and HUD, I cannot forget HUD, that's one of the goals of the grant that we have, is to get these federal agencies that in some way, shape, or form are involved in the home environment of people with disabilities or older adults, and yet they're not talking to each other. There could be better efficiencies and economies of scale with the funding or programs. And so we're really pleased that that has moved in a good direction, getting everybody at the same table.
That sounds good. One of the interesting things that I would wonder with that, most of us on this group are pretty much involved in our own private practices and looking at trying to develop a model in that. I'm wondering if there's room for someone from or representing that kind of group of therapists in private practice to be at that table and to look at some of the unique challenges we face in terms of providing those services and being able to actually be flexible and help.
Yes, so even though those two groups that I just mentioned to you, the representatives are from, kind of higher level, not doing the direct practice as you're speaking of, because of our involvement, not just with this program, but we do a lot of webinars, and we used to do in-person workshops with professionals and soliciting their feedback so that it informs the process. And, these recommendations and outcomes of these committees are based in practice. And so on the work group, depending on the activity, we have direct service, OTs and PTs, remodelers and contractors involved, and we want their input, and consideration. So there are opportunities for that, and one section of our website, if you go to homemods.org, we have a training section and a technical assistance where you can request to be on our mailing list we have newsletters and things like that, just to kind of keep people in the mix of what we're doing, but also what other groups are doing and other opportunities related to not just education, but learning about, new trends in the field, like Medicare Advantage. Now there's a supplemental service part of it that will pay for home mods, and, trying to just
well, while they say that pay for home mods, I've yet to find one that I can actually get to do it.
It's a little too soon, like that.
Yeah.
They think that the cycle, hopefully in 2021, then the implementation will actually happen, because it took a while for the approval, and then case managers just having to recognize that is now, is a new benefit, and educating consumers that they can ask for those things. And
well, yeah, and one of the things that we should need to do in that is to kind of, since it's coming out of the medical insurance, having a therapist decide that it's actually medically necessary, because I see a lot of people then starting to want to get funding for walk-in tubs, which are not appropriate, So that's really good. So we can go to that page and sign up and keep in touch. That's really helpful, because I think hearing from a group of therapists who this is our whole practice, and being able to allow us be engaged or have some participation in that piece is going to help with that conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing with the Medicare Advantage, of course, that came with that Chronic Care Act that President Trump signed was that they have the flexibility. So what we don't know is those benefits are not the same across all of the plans.
Right.
And it's very hard to steer clients that way. But I've had clients who access their long-term care insurance, and that's something that's really paying out right now. So.
Yeah, and a lot of Medicaid waivers include environmental modifications as a part of them, but because home modifications tend to be a little bit more complicated to implement than maybe some of the other benefits, sometimes the case managers for waiver programs or the consumers themselves don't even realize that there is that benefit, which is unfortunate because home modifications can help prevent falls and maintain health and well-being, and so not having that as part of the service package, if you will, is unfortunate. So we've learned that some state units on aging are working with Medicaid waiver programs to educate them on what the role of home modifications could be in the care plan, since they are written into the waivers.
Yeah, my frustrating part from that with working with them is that the case managers themselves are deciding on what's an appropriate modification versus someone who's skilled or trained in that area. Yeah. That's the biggest frustration I think I've had with that. So having this network and this conversation seems like it would be professional, very useful. And so that's good. But also, I think you said the conversations across a variety of disciplines as well.
Yes, not just through the executive certificate program, like I mentioned, the variety of students that we get, but the other work that we do with the committees and at the federal level and state level is trying to get those state housing finance agencies working with the state unit on aging, and making sure that there's that dialogue that's happening that isn't usually. So we're pretty passionate about it being multidisciplinary, and everybody has a role, and it's really a team process to ensure that home modifications that are going to be the most effective and the money is going to be spent well should involve a team approach.
That sounds good. Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I'm happy to answer any questions after today. If you would like to email me directly, love to hear from you. And
that sounds good. And what I'd like to do in our group is make sure I get on the list so that if you're having any of those webinars that are requesting information or updating us on things, that would be really good, because not only are we doing this across several of CAR's groups where we have up to 5,000 or more therapists involved, but we also do have a program for training people with home mods as well. So I'm seeing a lot of comments in here that said, this is wonderfully helpful. I've been considering this for several years. Thank you for this presentation and your time. Very informative. Thank you very much. Very good information, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that feedback. It's hard not seeing faces, so I appreciate the comments.
Yeah, so that was it. All right. Well, unless we have any other questions, Julie, thank you so much for your time. And I'm looking forward to going into that site and signing up to get the newsletter and hearing more of the updates, particularly about the committees and stuff as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate your asking, and we look forward to hopefully engaging with all of you in the future.
Well, it looks like we have several people that may be interested in taking the certificate, and yes, I'd like to be posting the updates and the webinar links into our group stuff as well.
Great. Thank you, Sue.
All right, thank you. Everyone have a good evening and stay safe out there and warm and dry.
Yes, exactly. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.